And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Is anyone calm right now? I'm not.
Not anyone on the North American continent, I don't think. But we can get into that later.
Welcome to the Strips and Pucks podcast. We are here to discuss the Canucks and how Patrick Allvin decided to basically throw a wrench into everyone's Friday plans. And after he made a couple big trades. But today, I am joined by Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. I'm a little cold up here in PG. That was quite the icy trek up from the Okanagan, but I made it in one piece, and I'm happy to be in my hotel.
Yeah. And then we also have Tyler. How are you doing, Tyler?
Hey guys, nice to have two people on this show in northern BC tonight. We are experiencing an Arctic outflow right now, so it is also unusually cold here as well. So bundle up, everybody, including Chris. Nice to see you guys both. Yeah, the winds of change have arrived. We wondered when that one might be, and here we are. Big changes in Canuck land.
Yeah, and I may not be in northern BC, but it is frigid here in Calgary as well. We're in the minus 30 with wind chill range here too, so it's not fun. But yeah, we got a couple big trades to talk about here with the Vancouver Canucks. First one, JT Miller. His time with the Canucks has ended, and he's now with the New York Rangers. He goes to the Rangers along with, oh crap, who was it? I've already forgotten. Good job, Sean. Let's go. Does it really matter? Like it's like it was
yeah. Eric Brandstrom and
that's right.
Trying to remember the prospect's name. Dorrington?
Jackson Dorrington. Eric Brandstrom and Jackson Dorrington joined JT Miller with the Rangers, and the Canucks get Philip Hedl, Mancini, and I
want to say his first name is Victor. Victor Mancini.
Yeah, Victor Mancini, and a first-round pick that was protected for this upcoming 2025 draft. Top 13 pick gets the Rangers keep it, but if it's lower than that, then the Canucks would get it. But that pick didn't last long in the Canucks. In the Canucks,
hole in Patrick Allvin's pocket real quick.
He did. So the Canucks then flipped that first-round pick along with Vinny Desharnais and Danton Heinen to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Marcus Pettersson, because they did not have enough Petterssons. They did not have enough Peteys. And Drew O'Connor. And then there's Melvin Fernstrom as well going to Pittsburgh in that deal. So let's break this down. Let's first talk about the elephant that's no longer in the room, and that is JT Miller and that trade. What were your guys' thoughts on that trade?
I mean, hopefully, thank God that the drama is potentially over now, because that's been a big gray cloud that had been hanging over the team for the past, 2 months now? Or at least it's felt that way.
That was my initial reaction too. Is like, okay, it was last week, Sean and I talked about the Jim Rutherford exclusive interview with Gary Mason of the Globe and Mail. That turned perception into reality as far as issues in the locker room. So I wasn't surprised that one of the two got moved. For me, less of a surprise that it was JT Miller, given his contract being shorter term and lower cap hit, and a lot of noise around the Rangers being interested in reacquiring him. So when it went down, I was just mostly relieved too that the saga is over. It was a great stint that JT Miller had with the Canucks. It's unfortunate that it ended in this fashion, but something had to change. I mean, the team was just not performing anywhere near to the level that was expected of them. And at some point, you have to start moving some big pieces. And obviously, the publicized rift in the locker room with him and Petey probably sped that up a little bit.
Yeah, so yeah, it was definitely time for the Canucks to make a move. They were close on actually moving Pettersson at one point. Then it sounds like Carolina made the decision to go with Rantanen instead. But Rangers have been chasing after JT Miller for a while now. So yeah, I think it's one of those like. I think what I really hope from this trade is that it's not going to happen, but I really hope that the majority of the fan base can move on. Yes, you can look back at some of the reported trade offers that the Canucks said no to, but how much of that is actually true, and how much of that is actually is skewed facts or misinformation or whatever is still like I don't know if we'll ever find out. But getting Philip Hedl, who is a 25-year-old center, was basically playing like a third line role in the Rangers organization for the last few years. Let's see what he can do with a bigger role here with the Canucks, because at least from last night's game, he looked good. Like he looks. I like what he could potentially bring to this team, not only short term but long term. Victor Mancini is a big right shot defenseman, a bit of a late bloomer. He's still only 22. So you're getting that, and then getting that first round pick that we'll get into what they turned that into a little bit later. With everything going on, I think that's about as good a return as you were going to get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even though they flipped the first round pick, just to actually have that included in the deal for Miller was, to me, okay.
A relative
I can
win.
live with that. Yeah, like that. I was surprised a little bit by that, given, again, the public knowledge of the need to move this player. What they then ended up doing with it and the totality of the deal. Sure, the fans are justified to feel underwhelmed by it, but let's be realistic. I mean, there was not a winning trade scenario here, given the circumstances. I think that management did pretty well. And I have to be amused a little bit of the social media chatter about how, Canucks fans must be furious and this and that. I mean, the sophisticated ones know that there was going to be a modest return. So I had to just chuckle at that. I mean, that's kind of why Jim Rutherford made his public statement, just to temper expectations, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think they were more so referring to the Joe Schmoes of the world that kind of stick their head in the sand until they decide to peek out.
Sure.
And we're talking about the again, 25-year-old Philip Hedl. His career high in 74 games was 22 goals and 45 points in 22-23 there. I think he's got like can he get to a 60-point level? If he can, then like that's about like that's and if he can do that, and then you combine that with what else the Canucks got, I don't see how you can be super angry about it. Like, and Miller's in his 30s too, right? So how long he can play at the level that he can play at right now is still a question.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't. The whole relitigating everything doesn't. doesn't help that JT Miller goes in and has 4 points in 2 games with the Rangers. But like we've seen him do that. Like when he's on, he's on. But can he stay focused and on for the rest of the season as a Ranger, let alone going forwards after this season? That is the question.
Yeah, I think ultimately the biggest win out of this from the Canucks perspective is the fact that they got out of that contract before it soured.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because the way JT plays, like obviously he's a heart and soul guy and he endears himself to fans for the most part. But given the way he plays, he's not going to be that effective into his late 30s. And that contract goes to, what, 37?
We were probably already seeing signs of that too, right? Like Patrick Alvin, the general manager, referenced his health this year as one of the challenges. And, you know, it kind of at times seemed like he was laboring through it. The fountain of youth only lasts for so long. So I think that's a great point, Chris. They were able to get out of this before the stock went even lower, perhaps, to try and make a move.
And that's just referring to the physical, because if you're exactly about the mental side of things, like I know it's all been kind of speculation and rumor mongering, but from the guys like Friedman, who's kind of been like eking it up a little bit out on 32 Thoughts and whatnot, I want to say it sounds like he's also been dealing with like a bit of like kind of mental volatility as well. So if you end up becoming a kind of a cancer in the room, if you will, like, just not going to work out long term.
I wanted to address that point too. I mean, I know it's harsh to use that description for a player, but I think Farhan Walji report addition by subtraction is what the Canucks did here. And it was kind of reaching that point where it was just too much of a cloud over the whole team to just following them around.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what is Miller's legacy with the Canucks?
That's a good
question. Can you say Bure-esque it, not only in the sense that he was a point per game player almost the entirety that he was here, but fans loved him when he was here and then ultimately left on a sour note?
Yeah, I think he definitely injected a lot of excitement back into the Vancouver Canucks, and last year's playoff run, of course, was part of that. His legacy will be pushing the internal compete factor, to a level that at times maybe was going too far with it, based on different things that you've heard in the media about how he was as a teammate. But I think he endeared himself well to the fans and throughout his tenure. There were moments where his commitment to playing defense, I would say, was a little wanting, but for the most part, with his production and just the totality of what he brought to the team, it was a good time with the Canucks.
He had, when he was on, like you said earlier, when he's on, and he's the heartbeat of a team. He'll drag the team into the fight and all that. But when he was off, and he had full seasons of it where he was off, he had time. Like, remember the arguments about how volatile he was, with how loud he was on the ice with his swearing and everything like that, right? I think it's a very complicated legacy that he leaves. When he was acquired, fans were irate with that the Canucks gave up a first-round pick for him, but he was more than worth that. When he signed his extension, fans were irate that they signed him to that deal. So,
or even just picked him over Horvat.
And when they picked him over Horvat, they were irate. Like, it's just, for everything good that that Miller was for the franchise, he, for whatever reason, whether it was him and his volatility, or it was the "I'm smarter than you" are armchair GMing from this fan base and media can do, it's a complicated and very turbulent legacy that he leaves.
Yeah.
Let alone how it ended, which is the other thing here, with the feuding with Pettersson that apparently lasted years. And then you had just how just defiant he was at like not saying anything and everything like that. Like it's just, yeah, he was a fan favorite in that aspect, but he just, I think just again, as you said, Chris, like how it ended with the sour notes and everything. I think he'll be like, his legacy is going to be very like a combination there of like Luongo and Kessler, in the fact that Kessler was a lot like he plays a lot like Kessler in that he's like the heart and soul of the team. He's a prick on the ice. He's a prick off the ice. Like it's, but leaving on a sour note. So, like, and we've seen how Kessler has come back and said that one of his regrets was leaving and how he left. I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years we hear the same from JT. Like I think I think what they got in return with Hedel and Mancini, just there is, I think, like with Hedel, I think there's something there, and then we'll get into this a little bit later because there was some talk on the local radio about what the Canucks are going to be looking for going forwards. But Hedel's 25 years old, has scored 20 goals in the league before, and was doing that in more of a third line role. Now, if the Canucks can find some more offensively driven players for him to play with, can he take that next step? Because right now they're loading that top line up. And then they put him in between Joshua and Garland last game, and he looked good. That line did look good, but it feels more third line-ish of a line there, as opposed to having a more like someone a little more dynamic offensively. So if they can find that and pair him with someone like, even if it's Lekaramaki, like it's just. I want to see what he can do with some more offensive like line mates, and because I liked how direct he is. I liked how like he just powers through the neutral zone, which is something we don't like. The rest of the team doesn't really do. So I think that within the circumstances that the Canucks were in, I think Alvin and company did good in that trade.
Well, and I'm hopeful that the team will play with more pace and more speed as a result of these moves, and that's been something that's really been hurting the team, especially against stronger teams with pace and speed and size. If they have all of them combined, the Canucks just had too much of the time this year. Just looked like they were either had no time or space, or they were feeling rushed with whatever time and space they had, making poor plays and turning the puck over, not possessing the puck enough. And all of that comes back down to just not being able to play at a fast enough pace. So hopefully that will improve here with this.
Yeah. All right. And so, the other part of that deal was the first round pick, which as we said earlier, was flipped to the Pittsburgh Penguins, along with Melvin Fernstrom, Vinny Desharnais, and Danton Heinen for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. And what with that in mind, how are you feeling about the Canucks flipping that first round pick in that deal?
I mean, at least for me, I feel like I kind of knew it was likely coming. Like, media was already kind of rumor mongering that if they did get a high end pick out of that deal, that they likely would try and flip it in the same way they did Hronek. And I mean, they were pretty spot on with that prediction.
Yeah, that wasn't really much of a surprise. I mean, I was hoping, there's a small part of me that was hoping that they would hold on to it and actually use it to draft with. But now that we see the hindsight of it, there was pretty clear what was likely to happen. And I think we've also seen the message that this management team is not willing to throw in the towel on this season, and in terms of immediate NHL help, they got some back. I was kind of thinking maybe a little bit more of restocking for the future might be the better approach to go with. But when you have draft picks to trade with, that certainly opens up the possibilities, especially if it's a first rounder.
And yeah, the fact that they were able to essentially kind of get their guy and drastically, at least in my opinion, pretty drastically improve their defense, which has been one of the big things that's been plaguing this team this season. Yeah, I think it ultimately, made sense, and I don't really have an issue with the fact that they flipped it as quickly as they did.
Yeah, Marcus Pettersson is 28 years old, a left shot defenseman, 6'4", 176. So he's a bit lanky, but he still fits that tall, that wanting that length and to defend mold that Rick Tocchet likes with his defenseman. He's a UFA at the end of this year, but it sounds like they want to get him re-signed ASAP. And I expect that to be done. I think that if they didn't feel confident they could get this done, they wouldn't have made that move, because you're not giving up the assets that they did to for another rental here.
Yeah.
So
actually, Elliot touched on that in today's episode of 32 Thoughts. He actually said that it basically sounds like what he's hearing around the league is that the Canucks are actually going to get that done, get Pettersson signed. So ultimately, the gamble, it was worth the gamble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, Vinny Desharnais did that experiment didn't work, so they're off that contract. Denton Heinen, I wouldn't say it that signing didn't work. It's just he didn't really stand out the way I think a lot of people were hoping he would, and he fell down in the depth chart. So both those deals were two-year deals. So, and whatever those, like the cap savings they get from that, they can put towards re-signing Marcus Pettersson. And just even like we didn't see a fully healthy blue line last night because Quinn Hughes is battling something, and so he didn't play. But when you think about what the Canucks blue line could look like, how the blue line looks like now, whether you load up the top pair with Hronek and Hughes or you split them up, it just looks and feels so much more solid now. Because you could go Hughes, Myers, which has worked the last little like decently, and then you go Hronek, and then you have Pettersson and Hronek as your second pair. Like makes it feel so much better. And then Forbort and Soucy, I think, is going to be your third pair at that point. Because Soucy has played the right side in the past, and putting him on the right side in the third pair makes a lot more sense than having him do that in the top four. And that will be regardless of how they load up the top four. That's the bottom pair I expect to see with a fully healthy blue line. Or then you could load up Hughes and Hronek, and then you've got Pettersson and Myers. Like it feels better. Like it feels less. Go, Chris.
Yeah, I was basically going to say, to me, it kind of feels like they basically swapped the stability of 4 forward lines to having a first line, 2 third lines, and a fourth line, to actually having like 3 reliable-ish pairs, or at least 3 proper tiers of defensive pairs on the back end.
Yeah. Yeah, with those 2 moves, they downgraded up front, which was always going to happen in a JT Miller trade, and they've, I think, drastically improved that blue line.
Yeah, it's no longer going to be the big factor that kind of alters this team's trajectory.
Should just maybe comment here that Carson Soucy was a healthy scratch in last night's game against Detroit. Coach Tocchet confirming that he needed a bit of a reset. I didn't really see much concern surrounding him leading up to that, but that raises some eyebrows. Any thoughts on that, or is it just think this is just a one-off?
I think it's just a one-off. I think it might be a bit of a reset because, like, to get him back in, I wouldn't say he was playing bad, but he's just not where he was last year when he was playing, and he's So what were the pairs last night? Because Hughes was gone, so I think it was Tronic and Pettersson as the top pair. And then they had Petey in there as well, along with Myers, Forbort, and Juleson. So, yeah, I think just based off of who they were playing and everything, I think that might have been part of it. But for the Canucks to be really I expect Susie to be a part of that blue line going forwards. I don't. As good as DPD did look last night, and man, he looked good. He's still young. This is still his first pro season in North America. There's no need to rush him. And they did send Mancini, Carlson, and DPD back down to Abbotsford today. I don't know if that was if that was anything more than a paper transaction for a couple of them, or if it's more. But yeah, it's going to be I want to see what Mancini does too, because all of the scouting reports and some of the stuff, the clips we've seen, he's not going to be a big puck moving defenseman, but he's a big boy, and he looks like he can skate. So could he just if he can be maybe not now, but going forward, in a year or two, be an upgrade on what Juleson is on the right side? That would be massive for the Canucks.
Yeah, and the fact that he's a righty definitely is kind of a hidden benefit in acquiring him, because right side defensemen are probably one of the more difficult niche guys to be able to get on a roster.
Yeah, and that's sort of what they did. And that one thing I think not a lot of people talk about. Yeah, losing Brandstrom, who came in and really helped the Canucks out early in the season, but has really fallen off and doesn't fit the target mold of a blue liner. And he's also a left shot. And they're pretty deep with left shot defensemen with Hughes, now Pettersson. Then you've got Susie and Forbort and DPD and Kudratsev and Brisebois, and I could go on. Hirose. They've got enough left shots, and especially with DPD and Kudratsev specifically coming up through the ranks, that they needed to make that swap. And swapping Brandstrom for a young right shot defenseman, I think is an underrated part of that deal.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. At first flash, you might argue that it was a somewhat disappointing return for Miller. But I think when you actually get into the nitty-gritty details, it's actually not too shabby, and it's an underrated kind of good piece of work. Yeah,
I think it's a well thought out trade, and whether it turns out and still remains to be seen. I think if the totality of the two trades, if Hedl can become if not a long-term solution at the second line center, even if it's a short-term solution, but he can still be a good third liner, and then Pettersson can help solidify that blue line. I don't know how you cannot say that, based off of the situation that the Canucks were in. That's not a good piece of work by Alvin, considering everything that they were dealing with at that point, right?
Because overall getting younger and cheaper.
The cap flexibility that they've gained out of these two trades is significant, and I think that's something that people need to also put into the discussion here, because we saw that the projected cap figures came out for the next few seasons, and there's going to be a big jump. And with Miller no longer on the books, Hedl making less than what Miller was making, I think the Canucks are going to be aggressive this summer. What in acquiring may not be in free agency, but it might just to acquire some players who may have some term on their deals in the trade.
Or if negotiations don't go well with Besser, potentially at the deadline.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the deadline. Like if they want to have some wiggle room to try to improve the team and go for a playoff spot here, then cap space was going to be a problem at some point. So that is an underappreciated part of this. People are just rightfully looking at what they lost of Miller versus what came in, but the cap space is a big part of that too. I like that the Canucks brought in a couple of guys from the same team that come over, and as far as assimilating and feeling comfortable, I think that'll help for Marcus Pettersson and for Drew O'Connor. And just looking at some of their highlights here, I think the fans should like the product with those two as long as they fit in nicely.
Yep. So with Marcus Pettersson, the big question is, what do we call him?
Apparently Dragon.
Peteys taken. Peteys taken.
And we call them collectively 3 PD, but individually he needs one.
I saw MP3, which the millennial in me really likes.
Oh,
yeah, I can't disagree with
I
that.
had not heard that one. That's really good. Yes. Yes. Oh, you got the nostalgia feeling going now, going back to our days in high school.
Yes.
Clambering over this new technology that was MP3s.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Drew O'Connor, he's a fourth liner. I don't think he's going to be much more than that. But from, again, small sample size of last night, he's forechecks well. He has a decent speed. It's going to be a good energy guy for the Canucks. I think that was probably the biggest downfall for Heinen, was that he never stood out for anything. So if you can put together a fourth line for the Canucks that has Sherwood and O'Connor on it, that's going to be a very hard line to play against, because they're just going to be in on the forecheck so fast and right in on the defenseman.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next comment, was the fact of if you have both him and Sherwood on the same line, I feel like that could be a fun, rambunctious, entertaining fourth line to watch.
Yeah, whether it's Bluger at center there, or even Atu Ratu, who was absolutely lighting up the AHL for a little bit there before his recent call-up. So I think it's going to be an underrated. This is it. Drew O'Connor, if Kevin was on, he'd be waxing poetic about him. I'm pretty sure, because he is a Kevin type player. Underrated. No one talks about him, but he does a lot of the dirty work and everything like that. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right.
One thing I just wanted to pipe in on here first. One thing I just wanted to pipe in on here for a sec is, we've seen now in a few cases this management group being willing to kind of surrender on moves that they made that haven't been working out. I know Daniel Sprong going back to earlier in the season. So him and Heinen and Desharnais, I mean, they were all in and out fairly quick with the same people making those choices, and that's something we didn't see as much in the previous management regime. They would really stick with some guys that are underperforming, overpaid, whatever way you want to look at it. Yeah, exactly. Here they said, we tried, not working, moving on from it. I like that. Don't be stubborn about a deal that's not working out. If it's not working out, fix it.
Yeah, and I feel like part of the fan base will probably easily be like, oh yeah, they made these mistakes and then they got rid of these contracts within the same season of signing them. It's like, well, you're not going to bat 1,000. They're going to make some mistakes. Some bets are not going to pay off the way that they thought they were.
Yeah, so I don't know. You want to just be stubborn and just stick with something that's not working just to save face? Like I don't think that makes
They're
sense.
keeping themselves accountable and continually
Yeah.
trying to improve the team.
Yeah,
which is what you want.
exactly.
They did that last year with after signing Kuzmenko to the deal and then trading him as well. So they are what they'll make the decisions, and then if it's looking like it's not working out, they will find a way to they're not going to be stubborn about it, and like the false thought of was it the sunken costs and all that, right? It's not until you let it be, right? And that's when they basically moved off those two deals to get Pettersson, and now I think that says more about where they're at as a collective like group that they work, and they're not willing to be stubborn about mistakes and just hold on to for dear life, just to save face, as you said.
Yeah.
All right. After both those moves, Tyler, you and we had a very sobering conversation last week after the Jim Rutherford interview. So I'll start with you. How are you feeling about the Canucks now?
Better, but I think it's going to take a while to really feel confident in it being better. This was a lot of change all at once that I was a little surprised to see it actually all happen so quickly and in this fashion. More optimistic that they'll be able to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs. I'm not any more optimistic about the true ability to contend for the Stanley Cup. But as we discussed earlier, just the fact that the soap opera is over, then now hopefully PD number 40, EP 40, can move forward with a little less weight on his shoulders, and now it really is on him to get to perform. There's no more excuses now, and if he can raise his level and play with a little more freely, then there is a good opportunity here for the Canucks to take a step forward. But I think we're going to need to see a couple of weeks of play here at least before we can be solid in that assessment. But I am feeling better.
Before I go to you, Chris, you touched on this here, Tyler. The pressure that is on Petey to pick his game up. How big is that pressure, do you think?
I think it's a lot because I think we've seen with Elias Pettersson that he does take the comments about his play to heart. I don't think he is able to block it out very easily. And then the pressure that comes with the contract, and now there's all this discussion about JT Miller, and he was snappy with the media about making shit up and all of that. Like this has to be better for him. It has to take pressure on him. You can just see it in his body language, especially in front of the press.
All right, Chris, how do you feel about the Canucks now after all these moves, even after all that Jim Rutherford noise and everything?
Yeah, I'll initially agree with Tyler as far as how he ended his piece, in the sense that it's almost a little too early to have like a full kind of assessment of how well we think the Canucks are going to be moving forward. But given the fact that they kind of had to give up a polished performer in Miller when he was on, to basically taking a series of gambles with these younger, cheaper guys, I have faith that it could work out in the Canucks' favor. Is it going to, have them at the same level of contention as what they were last season? Probably not. But I feel like, given the quality of guys that they were able to get back between the two trades, full picture, I feel like Canuck fans shouldn't be down on this. I feel like cautious optimism is probably the best way of trying to have a perspective on these two trades in their entirety.
Yeah.
And then with the pressure now on Petey, what are your expectations for him?
I mean, I would like to see him at least get back to 85, 90 points, if not over 100. Like, we know that he can do it. He's done it, a couple of times in the past 3-4 years. I would like to see him get back there, but even if he doesn't get back to that same level, I feel like even if we can get like to 90% of that, I'd be fairly happy. It's just if he can live up to it, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm with Chris. That to try to get back to that sort of level of production would be somewhat satisfactory for me. A lot of this comes down to who he's playing with, though, right? And he had a lot of success on the old Lotto line that is no longer going to be seen over the years with JT Miller. So now, despite the fact that they had a strained relationship, there actually was a lot of honest success with the two of them playing together. And Peteys had kind of a revolving cast of line mates, and so not mixed bag of success, to put it mildly. And so he's going to need some help to get there. But it really is on him now to be more assertive. Just get out there and get after it, and try to find that confident form that we've seen in the past.
I know the lines have been a bit of a blender this season, but I feel like now that with Miller gone, there's a decent chance he's going to have both DeBrusk and Besser on his wings, at least for, if when the Canucks are behind and you need to kind of juice up your number one line or what have you. I feel like that alone is probably going to help his game if that is a more consistent line, but obviously we'll see how it plays out in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's got 33 points in 46 games so far. Canucks have played 52. So if he could go on at least if he can get maybe just over a point per game, including a very dominant stretch between now and the end of the season, I think that will go a long way to alleviate the questions that there are on his game. He did 89 points. He had a season of 89 points in 82 games last year, and then he had his 102-point season in 80 games the season before. So I don't know if he really is a true 100-point per game player. He might actually be closer to an 80-point player who when he's on, he is a 200-foot Selke level player. So I think I think that's where the expectations need to be, I think, tempered a little bit. I don't know. I just don't know if when Petey's on, if he's truly a 100-point player, unless he gets the right chemistry with the right players.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then now that the Canucks have made those two moves, what are you expecting move wise from the Canucks going into the trade deadline?
At least from rumblings I've seen online, it seems like an impact forward that they likely would slot on the second line. Whether or not they do make another move, I'm not fully convinced. They might just want to stand pat and see what they got after this fairly significant shakeup. But I guess it really depends on how these next couple of weeks go.
Yeah, more depth at center would be nice, and I would imagine that's probably the priority there too. It's hard to really, I don't know, the market there for another defenseman via trade. I mean, how much more is out there really? That seems a little more difficult to pull off, I think, at this point. But I suspect the Canucks are not done yet.
Yeah, I saw some rumblings that they are looking for a mid-20s center who can be part of the team for the long term here. I think I do want to see what Filipino can do in a bigger role, but that part of that I think he needs, and nothing against Joshua and Garland, but if he can get someone just a little more dynamic offensively to play with and see what he can do, I want to see that. And maybe because I don't mind their center depth right now, all depending on how Hedel turns out. Because the only thing, like, you moved Miller and you've added in Hedel up the middle. Suter's solid, solid center. Luger's a solid center. They've also got Ratu who can play center for them. I think that center depth is actually better than what a lot of people are sort of insinuating here. But again, a lot of that comes down to long term, where do they see Filip Hedel, and all that. So, and like, because the other issue is, like, on the wings. Yeah, you've got DeBrusk and Besser as your top line wingers, and then after that, you've got a bunch of third and fourth liners. Honestly, like Garland, you can argue that he could be a good second line, like a solid second liner, but as good as Dakota Joshua is, he's perfectly slotted as a third line winger. Like, in my opinion, I think he's perfect in that role, and playing him up as the second line, especially this year when he hasn't been on his game for very valid reasons. I think I would prefer to see them looking at getting someone dynamic offensively for Hedel to play with.
I guess if they were to be players and buyers at the trade deadline, what would they potentially be giving up if they do want to get something that impactful that would potentially be on their second line? Because I think unless you're giving up that first, I'm not sure what gets you there.
I think I think any of the prospects other than Willander and Lekkerimäki are on the table, and all those picks are on the table, and they're going to try and be as creative as possible to make that work.
And yeah, I do have faith as far as the creativity aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would probably be pretty choked if Lekkerimäki was moved in some kind of deal here in the next couple of years. If there's one player they cannot give up on it, that's him right now.
Go ahead, John.
Him and Willander are the future of this team. You've got a right shot defenseman who can play all situations. Big minute muncher. If he pans out, that's what Willander is going to be. And Lekkerimäki already has an NHL, like, above average NHL shot. He just needs to figure out the rest of it, and he's starting to get there. He hit between him, like, the Abbotsford Canucks went on an absolute tear in January, and a big part of that was Lekkerimäki. A big part of that was Ratu. And I think you need to see what you have in all three of those players before you even think about moving them. And I don't think they're planning on moving at least two of those. Ratu is someone I could see them moving if the deal is right and they're getting a player who fits long term. I think the one thing to look out for with the Canucks is acquiring a player who's already under contract for a while and who's maybe underperformed in their current situation, and seeing if they can use that as a way to lower the acquisition price for that player.
Yeah, that's a valid point as far as how they might have to get creative to maximize the result.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else with the Canucks or those trades that we haven't touched on?
Oh, yeah, boy, it was a lot packed into this last week, wasn't there, Sean?
There was.
Yeah.
And I did listen to your guys' episode where it was just the two of you last week. And Tyler, I think the word you were searching for but couldn't find, exasperated.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chris. It's nice to know that you're
It was a road that I had while I was listening to the episode on Spotify during one of my long drives.
That's great.
Yeah, it's all right. So
I'll find a way to have fun on this show, even if it's unintentional. Yeah.
If there's nothing else, I think we'll end it on one NHL wide topic here, and we try not to get political here. This is a bit of more of an escape for us and everything like that. But with everything that has happened, with the proposed tariffs that Donald Trump was put out there with not only Canada but Mexico, we saw that at Raptors games and multiple hockey games in Canada that the American national anthem got booed. Does either guys want to give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm willing to go in on that one here for a sec. I mean, I just, it's very unfortunate. This is a situation where politics and sports are intersecting, and it does raise the valid, I think, discussion over whether there should even be anthems played before professional sporting events. And if this continues for a while, maybe something might change in that regard. But, fans are free to express themselves in all kinds of ways. It's a political message, and I just hope that the players are not taking it personally. They shouldn't. It's not about them. It's
or
about
the poor singers
issues.
who are singing them.
And that too, and I was on X yesterday kind of spouting off on this topic. I mean, there are people out there that want to conflate the issue and say, oh, what the players think? I mean, come on, people are smarter than that. Like, the players know that this is not about them. The singers hopefully know that this is not about them. This is about the bigger political issues that are surrounding Canadians right now, and that's hopefully all there is to really be there is to say about it. I can't see how any of this is surprising right now.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate, and yeah, as Tyler was saying, it kind of brings up that point of the discussion that some people have been having for the past couple of years is how necessary are anthems for professional sporting games. If these tariffs ever actually fully go into place, I feel like it could become incredibly toxic really quickly, both north and south of the border. There was an example where, like, most of these examples so far have been Canadians booing the American anthem, but Sean just brought up before we went live that there was actually an instance where it was basically flipped the other way around in Nashville, where they were booing the Canadian anthem when the Senators were visiting. So yeah,
that's retaliation.
So I don't see this playing out very well if they ever actually go and actually do get imposed.
Well, and here's the other thing of concern too is this Four Nations face-off is coming up. I mean, not just the Team USA games, but Canada versus the United States on February 15th. This could be something, depending on how this next couple of weeks unfolds. I'll be very fascinated to see sort of what the context of that is going into it and how the fan reaction is. There's a lot to stay tuned for there.
I'm hoping that with the news that we got this afternoon that it has been delayed by at least a month, that hopefully that'll minimize any of that at the Four Nations. Because obviously if they did get imposed, then who knows, all hell could break loose. But the fact that they got delayed at the very least for a month, I'm hoping that it'll minimize the effect.
I mean, I'm not going to compare this to international footy by any stretch of the imagination, but we do see in that sport that it gets to be serious business in international competitions such as the World Cup. So, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. It'd be really disappointing if the event was marred over politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do hope that it's not it doesn't overshadow it. With that, it is a tough one because it was almost dark humor, with the timing with it, with the Canucks game too, with it being Black Excellence Night, and they had a black female singer who was actually in a wheelchair, having to sing through the booze. But I did
she
hear
was so shaky too. I felt like really bad for her.
Oh yeah.
But
Like how are they not prepared for that? It looked like she wasn't prepared.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can be truly prepared for that when you're not used to it.
That's right.
And singing in front of
there's no way.
18,000 fans is intimidating on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think you need to. But from what I did hear that like people were going up to her in game and telling her how awesome she was and all that, and making sure she knew that like what happened was not a reflection on her at all. It's a tough line to toe. But yeah, we've seen booing happen for players. We've seen booing happen here in Calgary for the actual mayor. Like it's going to happen. We can't. Yeah, I agree with you, Tyler. It's making sure that you're rational about the thought about why it's happening, not trying to make it about something else, and being able to be willing to have a conversation as to why it's happening too. So,
exactly.
And to showcase the flip side of it all, like when things are going well between the two countries, like there was that one example where the American anthem was being sung in Canada, the mic had failed, and then the Canadian fans finished the American anthem for the singer. So like,
yeah, exactly.
When things are going well, we're capable of being more than diplomatic and polite and kind and all the fun Canadian stereotypes that there are. But obviously, yeah, with the volatility of the past couple of weeks with Trump, it's definitely an interesting turn that things have taken.
Yes. And then before we end off, let's lighten the mood. Let's talk a little bit about the Four Nations, and how are you looking forward to it? And if so, why?
I am, just because we haven't seen NHL participation at the Olympic Games in the last couple rounds, and as fun as the World Championship can be, it's just never ever going to sort of move the needle as much, at least for me, as a World Cup or an Olympic Games participation with NHL players. This is something in between, but now we'll get to see Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby playing together on the same team. And the other teams are great too. Like, let's not sleep on Sweden or Finland. There's lots of talent there too. I think the American team is super stacked. We'll see whether Quinn Hughes ends up participating or not. So I think some questions around that. But no, it'll be compact. I think the shortness of the tournament will create a sense of urgency that I think will put on some pretty good hockey.
Yeah, I'm fairly excited about it. It's definitely a good, half step back to full international participation. It's a little tempered in the sense that it's only just 4 countries. Like the fact that it isn't including like a hockey powerhouse like Russia or even other good hockey countries. Like I feel like limiting to just 4 kind of is a detriment to it in some degree. I would like to see a little bit more countries involved if they are trying to make it a truly international event. But shortly followed by the Olympics that the NHL players are supposed to be going to. So I think I'm ultimately more looking forward to that, but definitely to see like McDavid for the first time putting on a Canadian jersey since World Juniors is definitely going to be nice to see.
Yeah, he has been at the World Championship before, but like we say, that's not really the same type of level of tournament here. So, and then the other thing is too, the timing of it is just like kind of instead of the All-Star break, we've got this, and it'll be a nice little change of pace for whatever it is, 10 days a week. 8 days, I think. Math has always been challenging for me. So that'll be great as well. It'll be interesting to see that Canada-US match, as I alluded to earlier. Not just because of politics, that's one part of it, but just where our guys stack up against them. It's been a while since we've seen this level of roster go up against their level of roster.
Yeah, that national litmus test, if you will.
It is.
It's going to be a Saturday night in Montreal, Canada versus the U.S. Like, there's so many things. There's not that many things that get me more excited with the possibility. It looks like as long as Drew Doughty can continue to prove that he's back, like he'll be on the Canadian team. So you're going to have Drew Doughty on the team on one side, the Canucks on the other. Like,
Yes. It always
How
goes
can
right
it,
to
like-
Chucks, doesn't it? Yeah.
like you'll have Brad Marchand on one side, and like we have to cheer for Brad, huh?
Yeah, I know. I know.
And all the people
Remember
on
back
radio
to-
have to cheer against Austin Matthews?
I remember going back to the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. If I have my recollections of this correct, I believe Canada was behind against Russia in the semifinals, and I think either Marchand scored or set up a goal, and I remember just the reflexive reaction. I was like, oh my god, that's Brad Marchand. This is where we're at now. Yeah, I mean, he served Canada well when he's put on the uniform. Got to give him that.
Yeah. So I really can't wait for that. Specifically that game, because I think that game on a Saturday night in Montreal could be special. If all the players are there and they care, it could be like one of those just turning points in international hockey. Because they're planning on doing is it 2028 that they're trying to do like a full actual World Cup?
Yes.
Yes.
With or without the double IHF?
Without the double IHF. Because guess what? Money talks, and what's going to bring more money? Making sure that all the powerhouse nations are there, regardless of the political issues. So I think that
they have to have a way to get the Russian players into it if they want it to be a serious competition. It just is that way. Yeah,
it sucks because of all the political and humane things that we can't really get into too much. But for it to be taken really seriously, especially within the hockey world, on ice product, it's better when Russia's there. So
yeah.
But all right. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for tuning in. How do we follow you?
So I'm on X at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I'm at Schneids on most of the social medias, but specifically with Blue Sky, I'm at Schneids10.
I am Bearded Canucks 03 on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You can follow the podcast Shifts and Pucks on that same platform, as well as Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time. Bye for now.